The 1920s were a decade of economic euphoria in the United States. Industries were growing, cities were expanding, and the stock market seemed like a gold mine. People without much financial education were investing in stocks as if there was no tomorrow. Optimism was so high that many were taking loans to buy stocks, convinced they would always win. Technology also played its part with advancements in radio, automobiles, and electricity. It seemed like nothing could go wrong. However, this growth was not based on a sustainable economy. Behind the facade of success, a bubble was forming that would burst with devastating consequences. As the market kept rising, few paid attention to the dangers. People were investing on credit, hoping that stock prices would continue to climb. Companies, on the other hand, were artificially inflating the value of their stocks, further feeding the bubble. This kind of speculative investment, where the real economy did not support the prices, created an extremely fragile situation. The growth in the market did not reflect the true state of the economy. As a result, a large portion of the stocks was overvalued. This imbalance was a ticking time bomb that would have to explode sooner or later. On October 24, 1929, known as Black Thursday, the collapse began. Stock prices plummeted, and panicked investors started selling in masses. Stock exchanges across the country witnessed one of the greatest drops in history. Millions of people lost their savings overnight. The banks that had lent money for these investments began to collapse, unable to recover the funds they had loaned. Chaos reigned in the streets of New York and throughout the United States. The global financial market was in crisis. Although the crash of 1929 began in the United States, its effects quickly spread across the globe. Economies that depended on trade with the United States suffered huge drops in their exports. Europe, still recovering from the ravages of World War I, fell into a deep recession. Agricultural product prices dropped drastically, and millions of people around the world were left unemployed. International trade declined, and the protectionist policies of some governments worsened the situation. The collapse of the global economy fueled political tensions that would later contribute to the outbreak of World War II. The Great Depression was not just an economic event. It was a human tragedy. Millions of people lost their jobs, their homes, and their dignity. Unemployment lines grew longer each day, and cities filled with settlements known as Hoovervilles, where entire families lived in makeshift shacks. The banks that survived the collapse began foreclosing on properties, leading to a wave of evictions. In the fields, farmers also suffered as the prices of their products fell to unsustainable levels. Hunger and despair became a daily reality for millions of people. One of the most devastating aspects of the Great Depression was the banking crisis. The banks, which had lent money to speculative investors, were unable to recover those loans after the market collapse. Thousands of banks closed, leaving savers without access to their funds. The larger financial institutions tried to survive, but the lack of confidence in the system led to massive bank runs. Desperate customers crowded at the doors of banks to withdraw what little was left. This loss of trust in the banking system worsened the crisis and further slowed economic recovery. Initially, Herbert Hoover's government tried to handle the crisis with laissez-faire policies, letting the market adjust on its own. However, these measures only worsened the situation. With Franklin D. Roosevelt's election in 1932, the New Deal arrived, a set of policies aimed at reviving the economy. Roosevelt pushed for large public works to create jobs, established the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation to restore confidence in banks, and created social programs to help those most affected. Although the New Deal didn't fully solve the Great Depression, it provided relief to millions and laid the foundation for economic recovery. The Great Depression lasted for over a decade, and it was World War II that finally pulled the global economy out of stagnation. The demand for war products and the massive employment generated by the military industry reactivated the economies of the United States and Europe. Millions of people found jobs in factories, and governments invested large amounts of money into the war. Although the conflict brought destruction and suffering, it also ushered in a new economic era. After the war ended, the world entered a phase of reconstruction and economic growth that laid the foundation for the modern financial system. The Great Depression left important economic and social lessons. One of the clearest was the need for financial regulation. The stock market collapse showed the dangers of an economy based on unchecked speculation. The government also learned that in times of crisis, it's necessary to intervene to protect the most vulnerable citizens. Since then, many of the policies implemented during the Great Depression have remained in place, including banking regulations and social programs. Although the world has faced new crises since then, the lessons from the Great Depression remain relevant today. Today, the lessons of the Great Depression can help us manage our own finances. The importance of saving, diversifying investments, and avoiding excessive debt are fundamental teachings. We've also learned that it's essential to be prepared for times of crisis, maintaining an emergency fund, and not putting all your eggs in one basket. By understanding how the mistakes of the past affected millions of people, we can make more informed decisions to protect our financial future. Subscribe to keep learning about economics and finance. Give it a like, share, and comment your thoughts.